This is Garry Wakefield, and you're listening to Queer Life Stories. Queer Life Stories is about to launch, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about what I hope Queer Life Stories can be and why I wanted to start a podcast in the first place. Firstly, it's because I want to share people's stories. I feel that we can learn a lot about ourselves by learning about each other. Hearing about someone who is going through a similar situation or has been through it and come out the other side can be very powerful. I want to help capture those stories and the history of LGBT people. I want to share real stories from real people about their lives, the good and bad parts and the difficult parts. The inspiration to do a podcast, though, came from a place of anger and frustration. In 2017, Australia went through a same-sex marriage plebiscite, a vote on if the public believes that same-sex attracted people should have the same marriage rights as heterosexual people. There was a lengthy campaign period before the vote happened. There were ads on TV, on the radio. I got a flyer in my letterbox about how scary and dangerous I was. And it was full of bullshit, lies and inaccuracy. There was a local coffee shop owner who received death threats over his flying of a pride flag during the campaign. But then the vote happened and the country voted yes. Well, 62% of the country voted yes. The other 38% voted no. And since then, I don't feel like their campaign against LGBT people has stopped. Recently, the government has introduced a draft religious discrimination bill. This bill appears to be designed to make it easier for people to discriminate against LGBT people, overriding some pretty amazing anti-discrimination laws that already exist. I really hope it doesn't happen, but I know that people in the LGBT community are scared of what it might mean, and after the marriage equality plebiscite campaign, this just seems like a lot. This podcast is coming to you from Tasmania and is a one-man, no-budget production. I don't have sponsorship or funding to produce this. I'm doing this because I feel it's important, as a community, to share our stories and our history. Tasmania has had a difficult relationship with its LGBT community. Tasmania was the last state to decriminalise homosexuality in 1995, 25 years after South Australia in 1972. I remember the news back then. I was only about 13 in 95 when it was being debated if the law should be changed. There were a lot of angry straight people saying that they didn't want gay people here. In fact, the town I grew up in, and that my family still lives in, Ulverston, was dubbed Australia's most homophobic town. The Lonely Planet Guide for Ulverston even warned LGBT travellers to avoid the place. A lot has changed. Ulverston will be flying the Pride flag this week to celebrate the town's Tas Pride event. Tassie was an early supporter of marriage equality and recently made changes to birth certificates to make things easier for the transgender and non-binary communities. We are moving forward, which is great, but I don't feel like people's opinions are really that much different than they were 25 years ago. I don't feel any safer in public. I don't see a lot of gay and lesbian people walking down the street holding hands. And until people do feel safe to be themselves and express themselves, there is still work that needs to be done. I do want to talk about some statistics as well. Same-sex attracted youth are more likely to experience bullying at school and/or difficulty connecting with others. In Australia, 61% of young non-heterosexual people reported experiencing verbal abuse and 18% reported physical abuse. LGBT plus young people are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with a mental health condition and 5 times more likely to make an attempt on their life than their heterosexual peers. These statistics are Australia-wide. The risks increase in regional and rural areas. Our young people are suffering, and the government seems to be doing the opposite of helping, and that makes me angry. So I want this podcast to be a forum for people to share their stories. the struggles and the triumphs and everything in between. I hope that someone out there that might feel like they're alone or different will hear a story that they can relate to and know that they're not any different and they're not alone. If you're struggling with your own mental health and you need support, contact Beyond Blue on 1300 224636 or Lifeline on 131114. Both services are available 24/7. If you'd like to tell your story or share your experiences, or would just like to get in touch, please email us at queerlifestories@outlook.com. You can find us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Just search for Queer Life Stories. As I mentioned before, this is a no-budget, one-man operation to produce. But you can support this podcast and get behind-the-scenes glimpses and more information about each guest by subscribing to us at Patreon. That's patreon.com/queerlifestories. We will be back soon with our first story. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourself and each other.